That's when you get the Roy Jones mentality. I can't be stopped. I can't be moved, and I won't be shook. So once again, it's important we understand, regardless of what's going on. Once again, if you have got knocked off, just come back on, because we are still on. Once again, I do apologize, but it's out of my hands because it is the provider. So once again, I just pray that you pray with us and stick with us, don't quit us. All right. Once again, we appreciate Abba Yahuwah for your patience. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 13 through 22, and it reads, "And it shall come to pass, if you listen carefully to my commandments, which I command you this day, to ahab Yahuwah your power, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in its due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that you may gather your corn and your wine and your oil. And I will send grass in your fields for your cattle, and that you may eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and you turn aside and serve other power and worship them. And then Yahuwah's wrath be ignited against you, and he shut up Shemaim, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, unless you perish quickly from off the great land which Yahuwah gives you. Therefore shall you lay up these my words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall teach them your children, speaking of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your bed, and upon your gates, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which Yahuwah swore unto your Abbas to give them, as the days of Shemaim upon the earth. For if you shall carefully keep all these commandments which I command you to do them, to ahab Yahuwah your power, to walk in all his halakha, and to cling unto him." I told you one word: victory. Yes. If we do these things, Yahuwah will give us the victory in every area of our lives. Regardless of what area it is, we will have and maintain it. That's one thing about the excellency of our Savior and his commitment towards us, is that if we walk in truth and we do as he has commissioned and commanded us, we don't just get it, but we maintain that victory. Right. And so I don't know about you, but I want the victory that lasts for eternity. Right. I want it to last. I don't want to walk just in victory and then it ends. I want to walk in victory, and then I want my children and their children and their children's children to walk in victory. One thing about victory, when we walk in victory and we subdue it, like the song U3 sings, I'm going to walk in it like I own it, because I own victory. That's right. Once again, very important for us to understand. And if we're going to walk in it like we own it, guess what? We pass that down, because victory is contagious, believe it or not. When you start winning the battles and winning the wars and winning the fights, guess what? Then everybody else, I'm not saying that we don't want to win it, but you have to understand, you got to put the time in it to win it. Right. We've got to put the time in it. And sometimes that's one of the things that seem like we're constantly battling, is that time, that thing called time. Because no matter what, it's always that number one thing that we're challenged with, being efficient with, being using wisdom with, and that is our time. So once again, I appreciate you for giving us your time as we come together as a unit, as a people, to celebrate, commemorate, and praise and worship Abba Yahuwah, as we continue to move forward. And it is so. And it is so. And it is so. All right, at this time, as we come to this place, we're going to do our time of declaration. A declaration for our people, a declaration of healing and shalom. I want you to repeat with me. Abba Yahuwah, Abba Yahuwah, in the name of Yahusha, in the name of Yahusha, Amashiach, we subdue ignorance, with Torah knowledge, and through this knowledge, of Torah truth, we claim healing, shalom, deliverance, and salvation. We decree Torah truth in the lives of your people, our people, Yisrael. We unite, not to fight, each other, but the enemy, of our belief. And it is so. I decree a time of rest, shalom, and truth in Yahuwah, and it is so. And it is so. All right, as we've come to this place of our praise, worship, confession, we want to now seal it with the words coming from Tehillim. Let us bow before our King and let us say this in unison. Repeat with me. May the utterance of my mouth, and the deliberation of my heart, be desirable before you, O Yahuwah, my rock, and my redeemer. May the utterance of my mouth, and the deliberation of my heart, be desirable before you, O Yahuwah, my rock, and my redeemer. And it is so. And it is so. We have just recited Tehillim 19 and 15, and it is so. You may be seated in His presence as we go forward this great day into our lesson. We want to turn our attention to the book of Wayikra, chapter 16, which is also known in the English as Leviticus. And we're going to look at chapter 16, and this is after the death. Micah, or Akari Mot. Akari Mot. After the death. Last Sabbath, we talked about leprosy, and we talked about how to maintain a person that may have had leprosy or any type of sickness. But most importantly, our whole thing was to understand leprosy and how Yahushua came and was the deliverer and the healer of leprosy, and that leprosy came from Yahuwah, that this was a way that he dealt with children. When I say children, I'm talking about the children of power, that he dealt with those that had an issue with their mouths, especially with leadership. And so this is how he dealt with it. Not only that, but also we equated it to our lives, and that if you had this type of disease, that you were outside and could never come in until you were cleansed. And we also equated it with sin. It's sin. And that when you have sin in your life, that you will be outside and not be able to come in until you deal with that and until you are made clean. And so we don't want to be living sinful lives, and we don't want to be outside of truth, because we understand what is sin. Sin is transgression of the instructions of Abba Yahuwah, normally known as the law. Once again, but we understand that that word law was put into there, but it reads, it means instructions or doctrine. So once again, when you look at the word, look at the words that were taken out and retranslated or mistranslated, you get the word law in there. And so when you start talking about law, this is a turnoff to many people, because they don't understand that it's talking about the instructions of Abba Yahuwah. So this is why you have people fighting backwards and forth, talking about the law was done away with, and all of those things, without having an understanding that it's not the law, but it is the instructions of Abba Yahuwah. Right. Very important for us to understand that. And so on today, we're going to talk about after the death. Somebody may say, well, how is this prevalent, or how is this meaningful to us? When a person dies, the paramedics come and get the body, and they sweep the body away, and and then they take it to the coroner, and the coroner does whatever they want with the body. They basically take all the blood out of it. Then they go in and take the organs and do whatever they want with the body. Well, you have to understand, first and foremost, when you're dealing with death, are you following me? It's important that we understand how to deal with it. Now, this is going to be talking about also the death of the priest and so forth. And so, once again, dealing with death or dead people is important for us to understand. Are you understanding? Yeah. So, once again, we're going to get the information concerning death after the death, and looking at death, and then looking at handling bodies. So it's important for us to understand that. Once again, it's important for us to push. It's important for us to fight. It's important for us to maintain that regimen and our consistency. Why am I saying this? Because it's easy, if we're not careful, to find ourselves following into a system or a cycle that constantly loops us. Have you ever heard, there was a time, when records, when you had albums and 45s, and that's when I was a little girl, crazy, think about stuff like that. But there was a time where if you had a record and it got scratched, all it would do was play that same place right there. And they say, oh my goodness, it must be scratched. And they used to use diamonds as the tips in order to play the record. And so if it got scratched, what ended up happening, or that diamond tip got dull, it would just stay in the same place and it would just loop, 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 and loop. Well, we don't want to do that with our lives. We don't want to find ourselves getting snared into a loop that we're constantly doing the same thing. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about our mindset. Because in this way of life, we can constantly stay fresh and we can stay vibrant and we can stay vigilant and sober. We just have to apply what is going on. One thing I've learned, and we're getting ready to turn into the writings. I want you to go to Wayikra chapter 16. One of the things that I've learned, even about gas, that gas after a certain amount of time, I think it's 6 months, right? After 6 months or a year, it begins to break down. And so if you try to keep it, you'll lose it if you don't know how to put the additives in it to keep it from becoming just basically alcohol. And so it's important that we understand that there are certain gas cleaners and there are certain gas maintainers. I think it's called the, what is it? I just had it on my tongue. But it's a gas booster. And what gas boosters do is they boost gas. If you have water in your tank, then you'd have to get a gas booster and you have to get a gas cleaner. Because what it does, it absorbs the water out so that your gas will still maintain. Now, once again, I found that you can get gas and it can have water in it. And water will sink to the bottom. And when you get to the very last part, the top part of that gas, when you get to the bottom, it's gas, but it's more water than gas because it has the water has basically broken down the gas, or the gas over a period of time has broken down. And with the water being in it doesn't help. And you can take a match, put it to it, and it'll light just for a moment, and then afterwards it'll go out. Well, anybody understands gas? If you light gas, gas will burn. And I'm talking about gas freshly out of the pumps, freshly out of when you go and put it in your car, it will burn. Why? Because it has gas in it, and it will ignite at a rapid rate. Right. So you know when it doesn't have that and there's something else in it, because it won't light as fast or it won't stay lit long. And so we don't want to be like that. We don't want to start out running fast and be lit and on fire, and then next thing you know, a few minutes later, now our fire has gone out. Or maybe months down the line, our fire has gone out. Why? Because we failed to do a reality check to see what's going on the inside. We do diagnostics on our cars. We do diagnostics in our homes. So how you do that? When you go checking the pipes, you go checking all that, especially when the weather changes. When the seasons start changing, we change from the fall, from spring to summer. We go through and we do a whole thorough cleaning process and changing process, because you change out even your window treatments, also known as curtains. You go change them out. You change the ones out maybe that you use for the winter months to help it stay warmer. Well, now you're trying to make it stay cooler. So depending on what you have in your home, you change those out either to a lighter material, or you maintain the heavier material. It just depends on how your setup is. But the bottom line is you go through a maintenance checkup. It is important that we do maintenance checkups even in our lives, because we want to make sure we're maintaining and we're holding on to what has been given to us. Diagnostic is what we need. And this is what also our Sabbath classes help us to do. It helps us, not today, it helps us to understand when we run a diagnostic, it helps us to understand where we are and what's going on with us. If there is a problem with us retaining mentally, if there is a problem with us retaining it emotionally, because let me tell you something, emotions don't have minds, but we are a people that express our emotions, or we can express ourselves through our emotions. So it's important that we understand, once again, that we maintain our consistency and understand that the enemy wants our belief. He wants our belief. And not only does he want our belief, but he also wants our time. Very important for us to understand. All right. Now, once again, we're equal chapter 16, starting at verse 1. And it is so. Come on, who's going to read for me? Come on, speak a little loud for me. Or let's read 7.
Wayfair chapter 16, verse 1, coming from the NIV. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe after the death of the 2 sons of Haran, and when they offered before Yahuwah and died. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, Speak unto Haran thy brother, that he come not at all times in the Kodesh place, within the veil before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. Thus shall Aaron come into the Kodesh place, with the young bullock for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the Kodesh linen coat, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with the linen girdle, and with the linen mitre shall he be attired. They are the Kodesh garments. Therefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so put them on. And he shall take of the congregation of the children of Yisrael 2 kids of the goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. Verse 6. And Haran shall offer his bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his bear. And he shall take the 2 goats and present them before Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, we're looking at the death of the sons of Haran. Also looking at how they were supposed to handle everything. Once again, you just don't get out there and just do any old thing. Everything has has instructions. I'll put it in that manner. Everything has instructions, and we are supposed to follow those instructions to the letter. It's just like with anything you get. If you get a bicycle or a bed that needs to be put up, well, you have to read the instruction manual. If you don't, you're going to have pieces, and you're going to have screws, nuts, and bolts, and say, well, where are these extra pieces come from? Those are not extra pieces. Those are the pieces that you forget or forgot to put in because you did not follow the instructions. Excuse me. Once again, and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe after the death of the 2 sons of Haran, when they drew near before Yahuwah and died. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, Speak unto Haran thy brother, that he come not at all times into the Kadesh place within the veil before the ark cover, which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I appear in the cloud upon the ark cover. Herewith shall Haran come into the Kadesh place with a young bullock, excuse me, for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the Kadesh linen tunic, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh. And he shall be girded with the linen girdle, and with the linen mitra shall he be attired. They are the Kadesh garments, and he shall bathe his flesh in water and put them on. And he shall take on the congregation of the children of Yisrael 2 he-goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Haran shall present the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and set them before Yahuwah at the door of the tent of meeting. And it is so. Excuse me, y'all. Number 1, after the death, the occasion added force to the warning which follows. After an exhortation to the Israelites that they die not in their uncleanness, Yahuwah addressed a warning to the priest that he die not through committing a forbidden act in connection with the sanctuary. The communication was made the day after the death and burial of Haran's sons, because on the day of the tragedy he was unfit to receive it. Excuse me. Once again, very important that we understand that we die not in the presence or the servitude of Yahuwah, that we find ourselves not being caught up in those things. In other words, someone would say, but if we're not doing that, we're serving him. We are serving him. And in serving him and living for him, it will be a foolish thing to try to offer him something or do something walking in truth, and die.
That's right.
Because we commit one act against him. Are you following me? Whether it's in ignorance or whether we do it willingly. You don't want to die in his presence by being foolish and you're doing everything accordingly because you desire to step out. Once again, someone would say, but how does that affect us now if we're keeping the Sabbath, if we're doing everything we're supposed to do? Once again, you have to understand, they went and presented strange fire. They went and did a thing that was out of order and outside of their jurisdiction. Somebody might say, but how does that once again affect us? Easy. Because you have a many of people trying to step up in positions that are not theirs. Not only do you have that, but you have people that are doing things that is not kosher, and it is not the will of Yahuwah. Once again, this is important for us to understand, because when you are coming trying to present yourself or present a gift unto Abba Yahuwah, and you're doing it in a manner that is outside of what he has commanded, that's where you're going to find yourself falling into a lot of trouble. Very important for us to understand. We can't just do whatever we want and think we're going to get by. That's just like sitting up in his presence and doing whatever you think you can do. That's wrong. If we're in his presence, we're in his presence because he has summoned us to be in his presence. And you have to understand, anytime you open up your word, you have been summoned to his presence. He is the word. He is the presence of his word. And so it is important, or his instructions, his Torah. It is very important that we give him our undivided attention. Very important. Why? Because you don't want to sit up and die. You have to understand, we don't die. Sometimes you don't die first physically. You die, your ruach dies first. Not always, but sometimes. Once again, we have to maintain our consistency and not get out of a relationship with Abba Yahuwah. Relationship helps us to understand boundaries. It helps us to understand what is yes, what is yea, and what is nay. It helps us to understand what is permissible and what is not permissible. That's right. So it's important for us to understand how to govern our lives. And what they did was wrong, because they took authority that was not given to them into their own hands. And they offered up strange fire because they offered up that which was not supposed to be offered up. You have to understand, we can get in the way of Yahuwah. Someone will say, well, what you mean? In other words, if Yahuwah has already said he's going to do a thing, or we've seen him do it, then it is not for us to try to get in there and do it ourselves. That's right. You have to understand, we are only messengers. That's right. And as a messenger, you are a deliverer of a message. That's all he has commissioned and commanded us to do. When you start trying to take things and matters into your own hands, this is when problems arise. Very important for us to understand that. And so this is how they ended up dying. And the warning is, don't you die doing the same thing. Trying to offer up something to Abba Yahuwah. Are you following me? Yes. That he himself, once again, they tried to offer strange fire. And the fire that was to be produced came from Abba Yahuwah. But they wanted to get ahead of themselves. We don't want to get ahead of Yahuwah by doing things and practicing things that are not in his will. That's right. And then we find ourselves being judged because of our ignorance and our foolishness. Yahuwah addressed and warned a warning to the priests that he die not through committing a forbidden act in connection with the sanctuary. In connection with the sanctuary, we are not supposed to commit a forbidden act. Right. You're in the sanctuary, and hear me well, in the sanctuary. We have a lot of folk that like to forget where they are. Are y'all following me? Yes. You have to understand, when you are in his presence and you are supposed to be receiving instructions, this is not the time to lose focus and be doing something else. Very important for us to understand that. And so it's important that we follow the instructions that he's given unto us. And it is so. All right, let's read 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Let's read. Once again, don't stray from the truth, and let's follow what he's given unto us, and let's do how how he has given it to us to do. And I'm not talking about customs and traditions. I'm talking about the truth of Abba Yahuwah. Because, see, you have to understand the traditions of men make the Torah of none effect. Right. And so it's important that we understand that. I don't debate and I will not debate. It's important that we understand truth. And if you want truth, then let's maintain. If you don't, then keep it moving. Page 233. All right, you're going to start from verse 8. We're reading 7 verses.
And it is verse 8. And Aharon shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for Yahuwah and the other lot for Azazel. Verse 9. And Aharon shall bring the goat upon which Yahuwah's lot fell and offer him for a sin offering.
Mm-hmm.
But the goat on which the lot fell to be for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make an atonement with him, and to let him go for Azazel into the desert. And Aharon shall bring the bullock of the sin offering, which is for him, and shall make atonement for himself and for his beta, and shall kill the bullock for the sin offering, which is for himself. And he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from off the altar before Yahuwah, and his hands full of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before Yahuwah, that the cloud of incense may cover the lid of atonement that was upon the ark of the testimony, that he die not.
Mm-hmm. And
it shall take of the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it with his finger upon the lid of atonement that was upon the ark eastward. And the lid of atonement that was upon the ark shall he sprinkle of the blood with his finger 7 times. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, very important for us to understand what's taking place here. Instructions. Somebody say instructions.
Instructions.
Very important for us to follow instructions. And he told us in the writings that we are not supposed to go after the ways of men. And so once again, the customs of men make the Torah of none effect. And when you follow after customs, you're going to always find yourself in the seat to where you're constantly trying to fight and trying to defend yourself. One thing about it, the Torah will defend itself and those that are believers of it and those that walk in it. And so it's important that we understand. And look what it says. Now, before then, Haran had to bring a sin offering. He had to bring a sin offering for himself. Not only that, but also for his home because of what had been done. You have to understand, when sin is in the camp, it messes up everything. And when foolishness tries to abound and tries to be in the camp or be where you are, it just causes havoc and it's always causing problems. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand these things. All right, verse 9. And Haran shall present the goat upon which the lot fell for Yahuwah and offer him for a sin offering. Now, let's look at what it says when it comes down to these things. Verse 8. Cast lots. One goat he placed on his right hand and the other on his left. He then put both hands in the urn, took one lot in each hand and placed it upon the corresponding goat. One of the lots was inscribed for Yahuwah and the other for Azazel. Once again, you have to understand there were 2 that was let out. One for Yahuwah and one for Azazel. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, Azazel, the word is a compound of Azaz, to be strong and mighty. It denotes a precipitous cliff. Also gives the explanation that it was a height near Mount Sinai from which the goat was hurled. Once again, there are many different renderings, and I'm only going to read those 2 because many believe that also that there was 2 offerings that were given up. One was given for Yahuwah and the other was given for a demon. Now you have to understand once again, and I'm the type of person when the Ruach Kodesh tells me to, is to give you a choice and I don't want to say in choosing, because when it's all said and done, wrong is wrong, right is right. But to give you an option or give you a chance to hear some of the theories that's going out there. So if you come across it again, you will understand, no, this is not right. Once again, Yahuwah is not going to not serve his or share his beauty or his esteem with another. He's not going to do it. So once again, you have to look at customs and traditions. I would prefer to believe that it was the cliff. It represented the height in which that other goat, if there were two goats, that the other goat would be basically led off to, but not to be offered to, once again, a demon.
Right.
Because now you're saying it's almost like you're casting lots in order for this to be something almost to the point where you're almost making a choice. Whoever answers first will be the one that you serve, which is, we know, wrong. Very wrong. Very wrong. And if this individual is backwards and forth, okay, let's make sure. All right. No, I want to make sure. We want to make sure we have everything moving smoothly. Once again. Now, it's very important for us to understand that, because the Sabbath is a time of rest, not a time of debate, not a time of arguing and a time of fussing. It is a time of rest. It is a time of celebration and commemoration, and also a time of learning. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that, because we don't do that here. All right. Now, let's look at, once again, what else is taking place here with the lots. Offer him for a sin offering. Literally make him a sin offering. That is, the lot having been placed on the goat, it is designated as a sin offering. So once again, and then you have to understand this came from his own possession. This was his own possession. He didn't go and get it from anything else. Once again, when you are offering yourself and when you are dealing with sin, you can't go and get your offering from anybody else. This has to come from you, because it has to come from your heart. It represents you. Are you following me?
Yes.
It represents you. And if it represents you, then you can't go into somebody else's pasture or into somebody else and grab their stuff and say, well, I'm going to use yours. No, you have to understand why. Because this is what you've tended to. This is what you've grown. This is what is basically from your hands. So it's important that you understand that this had to be personal, so he couldn't just grab and take or do anything. So he had to first get it for himself. And once again, it had to be that, once again, without spot, wrinkle, and blemish in order for it to be offered up, because it represented him. Are y'all following me? Yes. And so whichever one it fell upon was the one that he had to offer. Now, shall he be set alive or set alive? Shall be presented alive, though it was sent to its death. It must be a living state, in a living state at the time of the presentation. It had to be alive. Once again, we understand, and let me slow down a little bit. We understand that when they presented offerings, whether it was a goat, whether it was a lamb, it had to be alive, and it had to be in well condition, not fair condition, because fair could mean a hoof, a broken hoof. It could mean a broken leg. No, what we're talking about, it had to be in excellent condition because it represented you.
That's right.
And while I'm in class, once again, if this young man is backwards and forth and it's not about the class, then let's deal with it, because I'm not for debating, and we have other people that are watching. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So if you're not going to sit in class and it's a debate because I am a woman and because you feel like I'm not supposed to be teaching, then leave. But do not come and disrupt my class with your stuff, because you can go sit in somebody else's class. You could go and sit in where it's a man, because I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. And I don't normally address people. But when you're constantly on my live feed, you're disrupting my class. Now, if you're here because you want to learn and you want to be a part, I have no problem with that. But if you have an issue because of my gender, then keep it moving. Because I'm not going to come into your setting or your assembly and try to force my opinion on you, because I know who I am. So once again, if you don't want to be here, then I just ask that you leave. Don't make it or disrupt it for somebody else. This is a time of rest and a time of celebration. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. And we're going to keep on moving. Once again, you come into the plate, you come in and you disrupt. Don't let people come in and disrupt. If they're not here because they want to learn or because they truly want to be a part, get them out of class. There is no instructions against doing that. Are you following me?
Yes. Yes.
It's a time of rest. It's a time of celebration. And we're not going to have people do that. We go through the week, all week long, with all kind of stuff going on. We're not going to have that. I'm not going to have that, especially when you somebody that's still wet behind the ears. Sit down somewhere, because you're still a child. And you're not going to tell me that I can't teach because I'm a woman. Sit down and mature and let the Ruach Kodesh lead you. And once again, we won't be disrupted. Get them out of here. And I mean that. If they're not here to learn, then we're not going to have them on my news feed, my live feed, backwards and forth, unnecessary, because that's not right. And I'm not unconscious, and it ain't like I can't see. Get them out of here. Once again, probably people want to come and always want to shut somebody down. Do you not know that's error? Let me tell y'all something. The Sabbath is not a day of debating. It is not a time to debate. It is not a time of frustration. It is a time of celebration. And it's a time for us to come together and learn. And if people are not willing to learn and listen, and the first thing they come off doing is jumping on folk, trying to correct them and change them, get them out. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because there is no law or no instructions that forbid me not to. It's important we understand that they got mad at Yahusha because he healed the man's hand. We are to do great on the Sabbath, not to come in with a whole lot of unnecessary stuff. And I'm not wrong for addressing it. And I normally don't address it. But when I'm constantly seeing stuff backwards and forth on my live feed, if I can see it, then other people can see it as well. And we don't want that. I don't want that on the Sabbath. This is a day of celebration and commemoration. And we're talking about how to govern our lives after death. And then you don't want to die in the household of belief. There are certain things that were done. They offered up strange fire. They did these things and they ended up dying. We don't want to die. So it's important that we learn how to govern ourselves. Even the writings tell us, keep your feet in the house of belief. And even your words, because when you come and you are maliciously attacking folks, that's not keeping yourself.
Right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. They don't go on the job and approach the boss or the supervisor when he's up addressing a situation. So don't come and disrupt the class. Once again, understand, trust me, I'm not unmindful of my authority and of my position. But there are things that we just need to squash and let it be done. And not try backwards and forth. Because people, when they come with that mentality, they're not trying to listen. They just want to be combative and debate. We don't have time for that.
That's right.
And I'm not going to waste my time with it. And neither should you. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because time is too short and eternity is too long, especially when you're burning in the fires.
That's right.
We're trying to bring awareness and a truth to our people, not sit up here and have them backwards and forth once again over gender. And I understand who I am. And once again, and I understand who's called me. And so I have no issue. But when it becomes a problem, we don't want to be backwards and forth, especially when you're on a live feed. It's one thing if you want to talk to me in private, but not on a live feed. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. And when it gets to that point, do not engage. Just get them out of there.
Okay.
Yes. Especially when they don't want to just listen. Just move them on out. Because we are not going to strive with folk. We're not going to do that. Now, once again, the offering, which is the sin offering, must be presented alive. Though it is being sent to its death, it has to be alive. You have to understand, we as an offering have to be alive. Not just breathing, but alive in truth. You can't present yourself to Yahuwah and you yourself, you're just animated, but you're not alive. You're just going through the motions. We can't just go through the motions. We've got to truly have this thing embedded in our ruach and in our heart. Because when it is embedded in there, guess what happens? Can't nothing and nobody change your opinion or your stand in truth.
That's right.
Because you have to understand, this is about a committed life. I'm committed to it. You got to be committed to it.
That's right.
And committed doesn't mean just showing up. It means being actively doing what you're supposed to do. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. Even if people don't see me, even if people don't see you, you still got to be active in this way of life.
That's right.
You got to keep the Sabbath. You got to keep it Kadesh. You got to keep your lifestyle set apart. You have to keep the feast and not just be going and doing it. You have to keep it in the manner that we were instructed by.
That's right.
And keep the Sabbath in the right manner.
That's right. Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. This is why we go through a time of learning. Because we are making preparations for where we're going.
Right.
Very important for us to understand. Now, to make atonement over him, atonement will be affected through it by its being sent away. Once again, he had to choose two. One that was offered up to Abba Yahuwah and the other one that will be sent away. Very important for us to understand. We got to present ourselves unto Abba Yahuwah once again, thoroughly committed, fully committed, unswayable. Nobody can sway us from his truth. Nobody can pull us from his truth. Nobody can come in and change our belief concerning who he is and our lives.
That's right.
Nobody can. Are you following me? Not even our very own opinion at times when we get in that place. Are you following me? Because there are times in your life you're going to question your stand in truth. And in questioning your stand in truth, you still got to be able to pull that down, shut that thought down.
That's right.
And rise up and say, you know what? Nope, this is just the enemy trying to beguile me. This is just my mind trying to take me into a place because of what I've dealt with, because of who I found myself at this silly moment where I began to think and believe that Yahuwah is going to change and do all this stuff. No, you got to pull yourself in and you got to begin to look and you got to begin to think like you are a child of power. And doing so, you know, he's not going to bring us to this place and then do a flim flam on us. Right. Only man does stuff like that, not Yahuwah. Right. So it's important that we understand that. And maintaining our composure and maintaining our stand in the midst of opposition. Are you following me? To where we're not changed. You have to understand something about the sons of Haran. The two sons. You have to understand, they changed their opinion and their view in midstream. Why would I say that? The reason I say that is because the time that they went in and they were right there with their Abba, they were learning from him and they turned around and they did a switch. And instead of them following his instructions, they began to be led by their own volition and their own will. And they ended up dying. You have to understand, we can't be led by our own emotions and by our own volition. Because the time we do, we will die.
That's right. We
will die. We can't just do anything. Once again, this is why we got to do it was told to the Tuskegee Airmen, straighten up and fly right. We've got to straighten up and fly right. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Because if we don't, we'll find ourselves constantly in and out all over the place. Just don't know where to do. And you have to understand, Yahuwah called us to go in a straight line. Not in lines that deviate and be all over the place. Because then you have no path for somebody else to come and follow behind. Are you following me? Yes. Everything we do, we ought to be able to show, and it ought to be able to, the path that Yahuwah has put us on, somebody else ought to be able to follow it. Yes. Because we're following his instructions and not our made-up instructions. Are y'all understanding me?
Yes.
All right, and it is so. Haran, now, once again, let me see, I'm going back through. All right, to send him away. Purification is thereby secured, as with the bird of the cleansed leper, which was to set free. Once again, the two represents one that would be slain, the other set free, meaning that the freedom for this thing has been approved or set forth. Are y'all following me? This is why I don't believe it was sent forth to a demon. This is why I prefer to believe that that meant mighty, and it meant mighty and meant mountain or it meant height, so that when they let the other one go, it represented that now your sins have been forgiven. You're free. Right. Are you following me?
Yes.
So once again, it's important that we understand these things so that we don't find ourselves being tripped up by, once again, beliefs that come from people that believe or interpret based upon their own understanding. Can't do that. So once again, when the bird was released to show forth that it was accepted and that they were free. Following the steps is what guaranteed when it was burnt or when the offering was given and it was received, then that one gave as a marker or as a memorial that it was that they were free from it. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Once again, it's just like if you put money in a machine and you put it in there because you're expecting what to get something out of it. You follow the instructions, you're going to get something. Mm-hmm. If you're getting juice or you're getting I don't want to say cookies and chips, but if you're getting something that's healthy and wholesome, yes. Are you following me? Yes. Well, then when it's all said and done, you put your money in that. That's what you expect to get out. Everything we do is an investment. That's right. Are you following me?
Yes.
From the conversations we engage in, from the conversations we pull ourselves out of, it is an investment. Am I going to invest in the furthering of my lifestyle and of my education in Yahuwah? In other words, reading and studying, or am I going to constantly invest in something that's not going to give me a yield? Right. We always invest in something that's going to go forward. And we know that no matter what, this way of life is going to always yield us life. That's right. It's going to always yield us shalom. Now, you have to understand, somebody may say, but right now, I don't feel shalom. If you're not embracing truth, you won't feel shalom.
That's right. That's right.
He said that if we keep our mind stayed on him, he will keep us in what? Perfect shalom. That's not a gamble. That's a truth, and that is a guarantee. And we've got to find ourselves truly investing in the guarantees of the instructions, which is the whole instructions for our lives, which is the totality of it. Am I making sense today?
Yes.
Very important for us. While other people are running after a mirage, while other people are running after those things that are not going to yield a future investment. Future investment. They're going to run after everything else. Once again, this is my future we're talking about. This is your future we're talking about. And if we don't line up in truth and follow things in the manner that we're supposed to, what future can you expect? You have none. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, Haran shall present. This is a resumption of verse 6 after regulations concerning the two goats. Once again, he has to present. He knows what he has to present and he knows what he has to do. We know what we have to present and we know what we have to do. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's important for us to understand that. Why? Because sometimes in our walk, we forget that we have a responsibility. And somebody may say, well, what you mean forget? We have a responsibility to always live this way of life, regardless of how you feel it.
That's right.
We're always supposed to show forth who our Abba is.
Yes.
Through our conversation. Are you following me?
Yes.
Our lack of conversation.
That's right.
Through our agreement and through our lack of agreement. Through our cutting covenant to our pulling covenant off the table. Somebody say, how can you pull covenant off the table? Easy. Because if a person is not walking in truth and they're not going to maintain that truth, why are you going to still try to cut covenant and walk in covenant? Right. You remove yourself from that covenant.
That's right.
And especially if that person cannot be won over by truth, you get out of that covenant because that's no longer covenant. That now just becomes an imbalanced relationship or an imbalanced associate or an association. So it's important that we understand these things. Why? Because we've got to be stabilized in this hour. You know, anytime especially dealing in the medical field, before they can administer medication, they have to do what? Stabilize a person. If the person is in shock, if the person has gone through a traumatic experience and they're at a point to where if they don't stabilize them, they will die, because without stabilizing them, they cannot administer the medication. And a lot of us, as the people walking in truth and as the children of power, we got to understand that we play a diverse role. And I don't mean playing as in a movie or playing as in a play. I'm talking about our actions are supposed to denote that we know we are the children of power and that we are the people of power.
That's right.
We are not just his people, we are his children. We are not just his children, we are his people. Are you following me?
Yes.
And it is important that we understand that. And it is important that this is a time that Yahuwah is stabilizing us so that he can continue to administer the medication.
So,
because what took years to locate us and remove us, it's going to take that time, consistency, and consistently getting truth. They give us antibiotics, those, you know, who ever been in, who've ever had to be in the hospital. They put it in a plastic bag, IV, and then they put it in your veins. They just don't stick it in your arm. It has to get in that vein because why? It has to get in your bloodstream. The blood is the what? Life. This is why Torah has to get in our bloodstream, because it's our life. And you have to understand, all the time, you don't get in major or big doses. Sometimes you have to get it trickled in, but guess what? It's still that dose.
That's right.
It's just sometimes you have to get it in small increments.
that's right.
And so he's showing us how to carry ourselves in the temple. Because you can't just do anything in the temple. Are you following me?
Yes.
You just don't go into a person's house and just go in and start moving stuff. Well, I think that vase ought to be over there. Well, I think in your kitchen, you ought to not have the mixer over there. It should be over here. I think you ought to not have your dishes up there. I don't think you ought to have this in there. You'd be like, excuse me. You need to leave because you're in the wrong place, because you're trying to rearrange something that's not your business. 3 places that are the most valuable places in a home. Number 1, your bedroom. Number 2, your kitchen. Last, your bathroom.
That's right.
Each one of those places can be, I don't want to put this, can be clean or unclean. Can be sanctified or open to any and everything. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So, it's important that we understand how we are supposed to govern our lives. 3 main areas of our lives, and there's areas that we need to make sure, you know, that's when the devil get mad because they're doing all kind of stupid stuff. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Important that we understand. You don't let anybody in those areas.
That's right.
Those are 3 areas that are, you know, people say those are gray areas. No. That's the lock and key area. Everybody just don't get in there.
Right.
Because everybody's not qualified to be in there.
That's right.
And everybody, it's not everybody's business and everybody's place to be in there. So it's important that we understand we are to govern ourselves as the children of power.
So,
Are you following me?
yes.
Very important for us to understand that. You can't just do any and everything, regardless of what society constantly tries to force down our throats. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, shall make atonement for himself. According to tradition, there were 2 rites of atonement, one by means of confession, which preceded the other. The sin offering, this refers to a second confession. The first is implied in verse 6. And by means of the bullock atonement was also obtained for the other priest, his house, for offenses against the Kadesh of the sanctuary. Once again, the word, if you notice, I said according to tradition. There were 2 rites. He said he shall make atonement for himself. And we know when he had to go in and make atonement, they were supposed to do what? Offer the offering. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's what he was supposed to do. The altar. That is the outer altar in the forecourt. Before Yahuwah, from the west side of the altar, before the entrance of the tabernacle. Now, it's important, beaten small. Since it has already been stated that the spices were to be beaten very small, and that's also in Shema 30 and verse 36. The repetition of this verse indicates that the incense of the Day of Atonement was to be exceptionally fine powder. So that meant it had to be extremely small powder form. Are you?
Yes.
Powder. It had to be powder. So once again, the instructions, in other words, for each offering that we had to give, there were certain instructions. And you couldn't give it a certain way if it was not that way. Are you following me?
Yes.
For atonement, it had to be powdered. Are you following me? For a free will offering, he didn't say make it powder. Are y'all following me?
Right.
In other words, we have to follow the instructions and we have to do it detailed.
That's right.
You can't do whatever you want to, because when you do, this is where we start slipping. And anytime anybody knows about a transmission, when it starts slipping, you can't go, you're going to lose some gears. And when it starts slipping, that's when you know, once again, there's some issues. Because it's not going to go forward. And if it starts slipping, it's one or two things. Either to have you going forward and can't go backwards, or you can go backwards but can't go forward. There is no in between.
Right.
There is no in between. So if your transmission starts slipping, that's why you have to take it and they have to go and repair it. Because you have gears. And if those gears get messed up, you have to understand going backwards all the time, that's not great. Because when you have to pull in, you can't go backwards. It's against the law to drive a car backwards. You have to drive it in the manner that it was created. And so we're weak to go forward and not backwards.
Right.
And if you go backwards, that means there's a problem. And that problem needs to be fixed. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It needs to be fixed because you don't want to constantly be going backwards. Because going backwards, you will never be able to see what's ahead of you if you're constantly going backwards. And I do pray that none of us are going backwards.
Right. Yes, that's right.
And so.
And it is so.
Because you can't. That's like going in reverse. We don't want to do that. Always. No. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. That he die not. In the event of his not conforming, listen to this. In the event of his not conforming to the prescribed regulations, he was liable to the death penalty. We are liable to the death penalty when we don't walk in truth. Mm-hmm. To whom much is given, much is required.
That's right.
This is why our people need to know the basics, because we're messing up in a whole lot of areas that we don't even realize.
That's right.
Some of us don't realize there's a death sentence over our head. It's just the mercy of Yahuwah that's keeping us alive because he wants us to find the remedy to remove it.
That's right.
See, because a lot of us believe that once we repent and come into truth, that's it. We don't have to do anything else. Every now and then, we'll be in a class, and I'm not throwing out at anybody, please. Because I understand sometimes you can't make it to class. And then I look at it like this, you go to different classes, that's fine because you're not a member here. But once again, the important part is learn and make sure you're not just learning just from anybody. Make sure that whoever you learn from is constantly telling you, stay in Torah, stay true to Torah, stay true to Torah. Don't stray from it.
That's right.
Don't let up and don't give you allowances and give you doors to mess up. Because truthfully, we have no room for error.
That's right.
We have no room for sin. We've already played that card. Right. Why play it again? It's a dead hand. Get rid of the dead hand and get a hand that's alive that will cause you to move forward and stop going backwards. This is very important unto us as the children of power. Once again, but we believe that we can do whatever we want. We can choose the Sabbaths that we're going to stay in. And then the Sabbath we just say, well, this Sabbath, I'm going to kind of go out a little bit. It's still rest, long as I ain't doing no work. They didn't leave their tents. Are you following me?
Yes.
That means we ain't supposed to leave our homes on the Sabbath. Now, someone would say, what if it's an emergency? If it's an emergency, we pray that it's not an emergency. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Somebody said, but what if somebody needs help and it's a mishpachot and they really do need help? Well, we understand, yes, we're to do great on the Sabbath. And somebody needs help? No, I don't believe it's a sin. But when it becomes a habit, now you don't need help. Somebody said, well, what about picking up people for class? I believe picking up people for class, there's no problem with that. As long as you pick them up for class and don't buy none, don't do that, go and come back when you can.
Yes.
When you can. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
But there are some things that people do. People be at the beach. People be at the mall. Well, we just rested. No, you're not. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You exacting your pleasure on the Sabbath. You doing things that give you pleasure on the Sabbath. Well, we just swimming. Show me in the scriptures where they went swimming on the Sabbath. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You got the first day to do that. We got all week to do everything we want to do. Are y'all following me? Somebody said, well, what if I'm coming in on the Sabbath and I got to get back to my home? Get back to your home, but don't do anything else but get to where you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Am I making sense?
Yes.
It's important. Just as they follow those instructions, so do we.
That's right.
There is no room for modification and for trying to change it to adapt it, make it adapt to our times. We don't make it adapt to our times, we adapt to it. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
That's important for us to understand. Sprinkle it. Only one sprinkling is implied here, since the verse later specifies 7 times. The one sprinkling was upward and the 7 downward. In other words, they threw it up, they sprinkled up, and then down. But you have to understand, it still had to hit the mark. It didn't just go up frivolously anywhere. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's very important for us to understand that. All right, let us finish reading, please. 15. 7.
Then shall the slaughter be great. Then shall he slaughter the goat of the sin offering.
16.
Okay. And he shall make atonement for the set apart place, because of the uncleanness of the children of Yasharel, and because of their transgressions and all their sins. And so he shall do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And there shall be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goes in to make an atonement in the set apart place until he come out, and have made an atonement for himself and for his household and for all the congregation of Yasharel. And he shall go out unto the altar that is before Yahuwah, and make atonement for it, and shall take the blood of the bullock and of the blood of the goat, and put it upon the horns of the altar round about. And he shall sprinkle of the blood upon it with his fingers 7 times, and cleanse it, and set it apart from the uncleanness of the children of Yasharel. And when he has made an end of reconciling the set apart place, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. And Aharon shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Yasharel, and all their transgressions in their sins. And all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by hand of a fit man into the desert. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities unto a land not inhabited, and he shall let go the goat into the desert. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, very important instructions. Now, to many, it seems like, well, why do they have to go through that? Because that's what they were told to do.
That's right.
Because that's what they were told to do. Once again, it's important that we understand, if he tells us to do it, do it. Now, I will say this, it's important that we understand. He said, my sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. Very important that we understand what is being given, the instructions. Why? Because if you deviate from those instructions, what happens? You mess up. And one thing people don't understand, if you remotely change anything, it changes it for the next person that comes behind you. So if we start changing the code of ethics, and we start changing certain things, instructions, statutes, judgments, that means the next people that follow us have to follow what we have tweaked and what we have modified. That messes it up, because now they're not following the instructions of Yahuwah.
Right.
They began to follow your instructions. This is why we have to follow it in the manner it was given. And it may seem difficult, and if it seems difficult, that means it's time to pray. Even the more. Because that means there is a part of us that have not yielded to his instructions.
Right.
And you have to understand, it's going to be challenging, considering coming out of a place and out of a system that opposed it, diametrically opposed the instructions of Abba Yahuwah. This is why we have to be taught how to walk in this way. This is why we have to be taught how to learn how to govern ourselves and how to do what is commanded of us.
Right.
And not going, well, that seemed like that's a little difficult. I said it before. You don't use a hammer. You don't use a shoe for a hammer. You use a hammer, even though the heel of some of these shoes, you can about kill somebody with if you hit them in the head right. But you have to understand that's not its purpose. Even though people at times use it for that because they can't get their hands on a what? Hammer. So somebody said, but if you could use it, use it. No, that's not the logic.
Right.
Use what it's supposed to be used, because when we start justifying it, then guess what we do? Then we'll start making a habit of using that what is not supposed to be used. We're not supposed to do that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Use what is put there, and by using what is given unto us, we will find ourselves developing and growing, and we will find ourselves maximizing and not being reduced, but being added to. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Added to, being able to read and say, you know what, at one time I really didn't understand it, but now I understand it.
Right.
That makes more sense to me now. That's helping me, and you feel yourself growing and developing because your tolerance for things, you don't have a tolerance for certain things. You have a your tolerance for foolishness is negative. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's negative. You just don't have time for that. The mentality is we got to move forward. And so with this, instructions are key. And if they didn't follow the instructions, and this is why we see what happened. Why? Because they started modifying and they started basically tailoring. And you have to understand, when it's done at the head, guess what happens? The body begins to follow. And everybody else does it. We cannot modify, tailor, or remove whatever boundary or whatever is put there. That is put there for a reason, and we need to follow it. The goat of the sin offering, on which fell the lot for Yahuwah, that is for the people. The bullock affected atonement for the priests. The goat for the Israelites. He had first to obtain atonement for himself before functioning on behalf of the community. So once again, you have to understand, anybody that's operating as a leader, we first have to make sure our lives are straight and make sure our sins are forgiven before we can tell anybody else. And many of people just jump and start doing stuff and don't realize you have to be careful. We know offenses are going to come, but woe unto him that the offenses come from. We don't consider one another. Are you following me?
Yes.
And when we don't do these things, do you not know you fall into judgment because of your mouth?
Yes.
And because of your actions? We have to be very careful of those things. But you have to understand, as a leader, we have to first be partakers. It is not you, then me. It is me, then it goes out. Are you following me?
Yes.
Just like it starts from the head and not the feet.
Right.
Starts from the top and then works down. And that does not mean that leaders, saying that giving, in other words, a status, in other words, with a head over you. No, you have to understand, a leader has authority.
Yes.
And you have to use wisdom, and you have to follow that instruction. And guess what? People need to see you being able to do those things.
Right.
If you're wrong and you can't admit when you're wrong, there's a problem.
Yes.
Even though you end up suffering repercussion from that. But at the same time, I prefer to be criticized by it than to have Yahuwah turn his back on me.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
This is important for us to understand. As leaders, you're gonna find that. But the bottom line is following his instructions, following them to the letter. And if you mess up, repent, because it's better to repent and people look at you silly than for Yahuwah to get you and people be applauding you.
Right.
Because they believe you never make a mistake. Are you following me?
Yes.
There's a difference between making a mistake and sinning.
Yes, that's right.
We never justify. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. All right. Now, and do with his blood, he sprinkled it once toward the upward and 7 times downward. The Kaddish place, that is the Kaddish of Kaddish, the Holy of Holies. The uncleanness of the children of Yisrael, who may have entered the sanctuary in a state of defilement without being finally aware of their condition. Now, isn't that something? Not being aware of your condition. You have to understand, once again, we have no excuse, especially when Yahuwah is making sure all areas are covered. We just have to follow in it. He had to make atonement, so if anybody entered in unaware of defilement in their lives, they could get it right. Are you following me?
Yes.
This is important. Once again, who would not serve a Savior like this? That will make sure we're covered, that will make sure that our lives will be presentable to Him. And once again, He puts safety measures in place to keep us so that we don't die. He does.
That's right.
It's just like you put safety measures down for babies. They have the little gates to keep them from going out. They have the little things you put in the sockets to keep them from doing stuff. But the best thing to do is teach them. No, dangerous. Don't put a fork in there. Don't put your finger in there. Don't stick anything in there. Don't put that in your mouth. It's nasty. That can hurt you. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because there have been babies that have fallen down steps and have died. Are you following me? Or wandered out into the street. And because they're so little, people driving like fools don't see them and run them over. Are you following me?
Yes.
Even parents that accidentally backed up over their children because they got out the door. So you have to understand, safety measures are put in place to keep us safe and to keep what we have safe.
That's right.
And this is a safety measure for us as His people. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, for the uncleanness, their transgressions of having entered the sanctuary willfully when unclean. So shall he do. He must sprinkle the blood of the bullock and goat 7 times in front of the veil, once upward and 7 times downward, and on the horns of the altar that dwelleth with them. The words imply that though Yasrael became unclean, the Shekinah still abode in their midst. In other words, the presence of Yahuwah still maintained. He didn't leave. And even when we mess up at times, Yahuwah won't leave us. Are you following me?
Yes.
And I don't know about you, 1 time is enough for me. I don't need no 2, 3 times to be sure He won't do it or to test Him. No, I ain't trying to test His mind, and I'm not trying to test Him. No. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
No. Once again, very important. There shall be no man or of the priest for himself and for his household with the bullock of the sin offering, for all the assembly of Yasrael with the he goat of their sin offering. He shall go out unto the altar. He proceeded from his position west of the altar to its east side, and begins to sprinkle from the north to the east corner before Yahuwah, that is the golden altar in the Holy of Holies. Shall take of the blood of the bullock, the sprinkling in front of the veil, atone for impurity of the sanctuary, while the sprinkling on top of the veil in the tent of meetings atone for the defilement of the tabernacle and its Kaddish vessels, such as the candelabrum, the table, showbread, and the ark cover. The Torah distinguished between these acts of atonement and mentions them separately. So each one had to be atoned separately. In other words, you just didn't do one whole cleaning.
Right.
You have to make sure, just like if you were cleaning, just say, not just different rooms, but different things that you had. You know, you wash dishes. You just don't put them all in the sink and then take them out. No, you wash the plates, you wash the cups, you wash the dessert plates, you wash the salad bowls, you wash everything.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
And you wash some things differently. So they're giving us, and the matter, once again, the whole understanding of this is detail. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand instructions and the detail of the instructions so that we don't find ourselves doing something outside of His will and finding ourselves being judged because we're being disobedient or being reckless and careless. We don't want that. Very important. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Excuse me. All right. Sprinkling the blood upon it. After applying the blood to the altar with his finger, he sprinkles 7 times on top of it. Cleanse it, or past defilement, and house it for future use. And he shall put them, the sins having departed from Yasrael, will place, so to speak, on the head of the goat, which went to a remote place where they would no more be remembered. An appointed man, one designated the previous day for his task. It means that one will be appointed for the occasion, or who habitually carried out the duty. He rejects the explanation that it denotes a wise man and approves the view of the rabbis that the man chosen was a priest, one who was familiar with the way of the desert. Once again, looking at the different views of this. One person was designated, they said it was a priest. They said that according to the writings, that they would give this person the task, and it had to be somebody strong. Now, I'm not saying anybody in the tabernacle was weak, but I believe it was somebody that was strong and once again knew the way, but not necessarily a priest. Are you following me? I believe it was someone that knew, not that they didn't know about the animals, because you got to understand, dealing with animals, one thing about animals, even when you domesticate them, animals can be unpredictable. So if it had to be somebody strong, that means it had to be somebody to be able to take them to a place and make sure they discourage them from coming back. Because animals are like this. If you ever feed an animal, they'll follow you. If you ever show any kind of endearment or any kind of affection to animals, whether they're out in the wild, they will follow you and they will keep coming back because they're expecting you to do what you did because you met a need. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And so it had to be someone that I'm fully persuaded that was able to take the animal, pull the animal or lead the animal away, and then be able to get back and that animal not be able to follow. Or if they started following them, they had strength enough to push them away to where they would discourage them from trying to keep following. Are you following me? Yes. Everybody has a task. Everybody has something that has to be done. We all do. And nobody can do it like you.
That's right.
This is important that we understand. We all are a part of this mishpachah. Sometimes it's just finding out what you're supposed to do. And many of us sometimes don't know what to do because when we came out of Christianity, we felt like if you tell somebody they're a prayer warrior or an intercessor, oh, that's church. No, show me where that's church, where you have people that pray.
Right.
Our people are supposed to pray. Once again, Luke 18:1, men are to always pray and not faint.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. And that when we pray, if we believe it, we shall receive it. Once again, Yehukin and Moshe 11:24 speaks on prayer. We are a people that are supposed to pray.
Yes.
And because you call for people that pray consistently and regularly because that's their gift, doesn't mean that you're trying to set up church. It means that you understand the congregation and you understand us as a people.
That's right.
Everybody has their different gift and talent. So it's important that we understand how to follow these things. And in doing so, we will make sure we can strengthen our lives and strengthen the lives of those that are around us. And it is so.
And it is so.
Now, a land which is cut off, a barren land which is cut off from all produce. From all produce. In other words, this land is a land that they ain't gonna be able to eat. Eventually, they're going to die. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
So they let it off. So once again, it would not be able to come back, and it would be in a place barren and nothing there to keep it alive. Because you have to remember, once our sins are forgiven, and once Yahuwah forgives us, He casts them into the sea of forgetfulness, never to remember them anymore. And that was the I say the visual of them being cast away. Never to come back, never to be a reminder. And this is why, once again, when He forgives us, let's not go back and now it's a new set. Because remember, if you go back doing the old thing that you used to do, that's now starting up a whole new chapter. In other words, that it's not starting at 1. Now you at 2.
Right.
Are you following? Because now you have restarted this thing, and we don't want to do that because now that sin that was there, now it revives. It's alive, and it starts chapter 2 of your life,
Right.
and of my life if I do that. And we don't want to do that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. All right, let's continue to read, please.
be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country or a foreigner that lives among you. For on that day shall the Kohen make atonement for you, to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before Yahuwah. And it shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and you shall afflict your souls by a statute forever. And the Kohen whom he shall anoint, and whom he shall consecrate to minister in the Kohen's office, in his father's stead, shall make the atonement, and shall put on the linen clothes, even the set apart garments. And he shall make atonement for the set apart sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tabernacle of the congregation, and for the altar, and he shall make atonement for the Kohanim, and for all the people of the congregation. And this shall be an everlasting statute unto you, to make an atonement for the children of Yahweh for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe.
And it is so. Once again, important that we look at the instructions that were given unto them. Now, once again, as we look back, everything that was done, even he had to wash his clothes. Are you following me? Just kind of looking at verse 24. And he shall bathe his flesh in water in a Kaddish place, and put on his other vestment, and come forth and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. In other words, he didn't do it in his attire. He had to basically unrobe himself in that manner, and then come and do, in other words, what you would call laity clothes, or just regular clothes. He had to do that, and then he had to proceed on. Once again, very important for us to understand these things. Everything Yahuwah does is to help us to understand equality and visualize what is taking place, or what had taken place. Right. So that we can experience it, though we were not there, but we still get that experience. We still experience how they had to usher an animal in, how they had to cut it up. Are you following me?
Yes.
And realizing you had to be fully focused on these things. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So it's very important. Now, once again, after he washed his clothes and he bathed his flesh in water, verse 26, and afterward he may come into the camp until everything was right and until everything was satisfied. Couldn't come into the camp. Nowadays, we just let any and everybody come into the camp without truly understanding lifestyle. Right. And I think a lot of times what happens is people believe that it doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't matter what we say, it doesn't matter how we do it or say, it doesn't really matter. All it matters is that we, wear our seats and we wear, long hair or what have you, and we say we're the people, but then when it comes to our character and our truly living according to it, can people really see? Can people single you out of a crowd and say they are the people? Those are them Hebrews, those are those Ibram, those are the people of the way. Can people look at our lives and say that? Right. Now watch this. Even if we were stripped of everything that we have, could people say that now and we're walking in this? Can our lives speak volumes without the things that we have on that distinguish us from everybody else? Based upon our credit or the credibility of our lives and the words that come out of our mouths. Right. Yes. Or do we need all these on for people to recognize who we are?
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
They ought to see and know who we are because we live by Torah.
That's right.
And not because we are running around saying, I am the people, I am the people, I am that person. Right. Now, once again, very important for us to understand. And it shall, verse 29, and it shall be a statute forever unto you. In the 7th month of the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls and shall do no manner of work, and the homeborn or the stranger that sojourneth among you. Once again, it's important that we understand it's a statute for us forever. In the 10th month and on the 7th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls. That is also fasting. Fasting and a Sabbath. Are you following me?
Yes.
And he says, and it shall be a statute forever unto you. That means no matter where we are, this is a statute unto us. No matter where, the homeborn or the stranger that sojourneth among you. In other words, if you're going to be with us and be in this way, you have to do exactly what was told. You have to follow the instructions to the latter. Are you understanding me?
Yes.
Verse 30, for on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you from all your sins, shall you be clean before Yahuwah. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest unto you, and you shall afflict your souls. It is a statute forever. And the priest who shall be anointed and shall be consecrated to be priest in his father's stead shall make the atonement and shall put on the linen garments, even the Kaddish garments. Once again, this is talking about atonement. Very important for us to understand how we are to govern our lives and how we are to live our lives. One of the issues that our people run into, especially when you have people that are fighting and bickering over esteeming Yahusha, and those that say, you know, we don't, and then those that ask the questions, well, if he's forgiven us, then why do we continue to celebrate the Day of Atonement? Because we do, and because it's a statute.
That's right.
It's a commandment. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
Are you following me?
Yes.
If I don't ever give you, or nobody else can ever give you an in-depth answer, and what people may think just saying because he said so is shallow, well, that just shows where a lot of our people are. Because if a person can give you an explanation outside of this truth, something wrong with that. Because he said, it is a statute unto you forever. Are you understanding me?
Yes.
To afflict our souls. We know we've been forgiven, but it's a statute unto us, and we are supposed to perform that statute. We are supposed to walk in it wholeheartedly and no other way. It's important that we understand that. And there are some things, once again, if that is all that is there, then don't let anybody add to it or take it away.
That's right.
It's a statute for us. That means it's supposed to be done. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. And he has not changed it. Verse 33, and he shall make atonement for the most Kadesh place, and he shall make atonement for the tent of meeting, and for the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priest, and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be an everlasting statute unto you to make atonement for the children of Yasrael because of all their sins once in the year. And he did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, we know Yahusha came, and we know he covered our sins, and we know it is his blood that covers our lives, and it's his blood that keeps us in the place that we're in. And Yahuwah said it's a statute unto us, and we're going to do it.
That's right.
We're going to do it as long as we are here. We're going to continue to follow and adhere to his instructions. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Very important. All right, let us look at chapter 17. And we're going to read, let's read 7 verses again. Well, actually, let's read 5 verses. It's not long at all. We equals 17. Once again, we're still talking about after the death. Very important for us to understand instructions. Now, can y'all imagine, once again, and I know sometimes during the Sabbath, people can get a little impatient, and then people can, you know, get to a point where they feel like, man, this is a long class. Because I've heard people say, boy, that's a long class. Do you not know on the Sabbath the stuff that they had, well, they didn't do, but there was always offering going up during the Sabbath. And even when they had class, they always had the class. And you have to understand, when they went from house to house breaking the king, that the classes were not 2 minutes long. Neither were they 4 or 5 minutes long. Sometimes those classes lasted hours. Why? Because you have to understand, when you are acclimating yourself, to read means you were already doing it. No, we are acclimating ourselves to Torah.
That's right.
It would be different if we in our generation walked away from it, but we didn't. We are acclimating ourselves to Torah truth because we didn't know it was Torah truth. We just thought it was church.
Right.
We thought it was grace. We thought it was the Bible. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So because we understand it's not that, it takes time. Once again, we are in a time of recovery, restoration, and then true revival. Recovery means sometimes there are people that need to be resuscitated. And the only thing that can do that is our truth.
That's right.
We've got to purge our lives of that what is erroneous teaching and place truth in there. And sometimes that takes a moment. We're not in the waiting room. We're in the operating room now.
Yes, that's right.
So now we've got to let Yahuwah do what he does best, and that's bring us back in the truth through his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and it is so.
And it is so.
All right, let's read chapter 18, and let's do 5 verses. I'm sorry, chapter 17. I'm skipping a chapter. I'm sorry, chapter 17.
And and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons and all the children of Yasharal, and say unto them, This is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded, saying, Whatever man there be of the band of Yasharal, that slaughters an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or that slaughters it out of the camp, and bring it out to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, to offer an offering unto Yahuwah before the tabernacle of Yahuwah, blood shall be imputed unto that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. To the end of the children of Yasharal may bring their sacrifices, which they offer in the open field, even that they may bring them unto Yahuwah, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, unto the Kohen, and offer them for a shalom offering unto Yahuwah. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, instructions on how when you're offering an offering, on when you're out there doing. Now, listen what he said. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and unto his sons, and unto all the children of Yasrael, and say unto them, This is the thing which Yahuwah hath commanded, saying. Once again, in other words, when Yahuwah commands a thing, that means that there is something that needs to be dealt with that is already taken place, or something that is getting ready to take place imminently. And before they get into it and get in trouble, he wants to bring corrections.
That's right.
Very important for us to understand that. Once again, those whom you ahab, you're going to bring correction, and you're just going to show the errors. Are y'all following me? Yes. Very important for us to understand, because sometimes I think with us as a people, we don't think we need to be corrected. It's the truth.
Yes, that's right.
I don't think we believe that. He says, Speak unto Haran. Now, all right, I'm going to read this. Y'all know I like to read the footnotes, and there are those sometimes that I don't read because it is irrelevant. And there are some that I read. I enjoy reading them because some of them I believe are beneficial, and then some of them you can really tell when a person is kind of going off and they're really just going off with out of their own, which all of them when we interpret or when we give, even when I give my scenario, it's based upon how I view it. But then there are some views that are swayed.
Right.
And I tend not to do those because one thing we want to bring balance. And I believe that in order to do so, we have to understand and recognize we need each other. Are you following me?
Yes.
And I say that in this respect, man without the woman is incomplete.
Right.
Woman without the man is incomplete.
Right.
We were meant to be together. Are you following me?
Yes.
Ish and Isha, Isha and Ish. And without each other, we're incomplete. And so there are times, when things are spoken that can bring a major imbalance, or even just cause not so much a disturbance, but a swaying. You follow what I'm saying? I want people to be swayed and move towards Torah truth. Are you following me?
Yes.
And so once again, there are things that I bring out, and then there are things that the Ruach Kodesh will have me to be silent on, and then there are times she will allow me to say things, especially when in the atmosphere that we are in, that it can be taken and judged in the wrong manner.
Right.
And that's just the truth. But this is one I believe that is another one that I believe is that I believe would be beneficial for us to hear. Now, This is a person that attacked those who declare that meat must not be eaten in the diaspora since sacrifices have now ceased. Now, and the reason why I'm saying this is because we have a lot of people that are vegan. And they're vegan because they believe that we were not supposed to eat meat, and despite of Wayikra chapter 11, which gives us a menu, per se, or a list of things we can eat, that we can indulge in. There are still yet those that have researched and gone beyond that and said, but what I found, and but what I've seen, and this is a person that is dealing with that, because you have to understand there was a way that meat was supposed to be slaughtered, and there was, in other words, there had to be or needed to be witnesses on how meat personally was slaughtered. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Yes. In other words, to make sure that meat was done right, just like in I believe it's in Romans chapter 14. Where it talks about eating meat and the weaker believer. Well, many times people didn't want to eat meat that was from other people because they were not sure if these people handled their meat in a kosher manner, and the preparing of it and the cutting of it. So they wanted to be sure that if they ate at this person's home, it was prepared and cut up in the right way. Because you have people that do not know how to cut a chicken up. They will butcher it to death. It's already dead, but they'll tear that meat up. Right. Then you have those that understand you cut in between the bone and the sinew, right? You cut into that. And that keeps you from spilling or cutting blood vessels. So if you don't understand how to cut meat and you cut it and blood spills over into the meat, that contaminates the meat. Right. Are y'all following me? So once again, the understanding with many of people is because certain things we're not supposed to eat it. One, many people say it's not clean, but Yahuwah's not going to give us something and say it's okay and it's unclean.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
He told us we can eat meat according to Wayikra chapter 11, the meat that's on the list. We found out don't eat turkey. Turkey is part of the vulture family. And I'm so thankful that someone told us, because before then, that's what we'd be having on the Sabbath, because it's economical and it's easy to cook. But you can't eat turkey, because if you look at turkey and just do it, go find a turkey on a box, or you can pull it up on the internet and look at what a vulture looks like. Right. It's the same bird. And what they did was they domesticated it and just made it, where you could eat it. It turns my stomach now to think that we were eating it, but at the same time, when you don't know any better, you're going to do these things. So we understand. Now, people go to say, well, chicken is not kosher. Chicken is. You can eat chicken.
That's right.
You can. But don't eat no turkey.
That's right.
Do not mess with that turkey. Leave that turkey completely alone. All right. Now, according to the purpose of this chapter is to emphasize that the slaughtering of animals as sacrifices must only be done within the precinct of the sanctuary. While the Israelites were in the wilderness, the only meat allowed to them was from the peace offering brought on the altar. The three species of animals, the ox, lamb, and goat, were sacrificed as shalom offerings in the tent of meeting, and their fat and blood offered on the altar. Only when that had been done might the meat be eaten. But when their borders were extended, the Israelites were permitted to eat non-sacrificial meat because they dwelt far from the temple. Now, once again, this is why a lot of times people believe that you're not supposed to eat meat, because it was not that which was offered in the temple. Are you following me? But when you look at Wayikra chapter 11, Yahuwah gives us distinctively and in detail what is allowed to be eaten. Are you following me? They offered up pigeons. Or doves. Let me change that. They offered up doves. Pigeons are a part of the dove family. That's right. Are you following me? Yes. Quail. They ate quail. And so there were certain things that they ate. And because people felt like, once again, nowhere does it say that because they were not near the temple, they couldn't eat meat. That's right. But because they felt during this time, if it wasn't going to be offered in the temple, then it couldn't be eaten. Now, you have a lot of people, even in this walk, that have this saying. If it can't be put on your body and you can't do other things with it, then you shouldn't eat it. Are you following me? Just because that's a person's theory on that, or that's a person's what you call it, creed, or that's their way of doing things, does that mean that that's supposed to go across the board? And that doesn't mean that that's Yahuwah's way. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's kosher meat, and anything that is kosher is permitted. Even when they cut, that's why he said if he's out in the field, he still has to bring his portion of the sacrifice. If he doesn't, then he's going to pay the consequences for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he's going to pay the consequences for that is because now he's stealing.
Right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
You're stealing. You are supposed to give that what you're supposed to offer to Yahuwah. Just bring it, especially if it is your offering. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Once again, we disconnect ourselves from these because we have, in this place where we are, we seem to feel we have nothing to connect it or align it up with. So we say, well, you know, they said an ox. I ain't giving no money because no ox ain't no money. Are you following me?
Yes.
So we start changing things, and we start basically removing boundaries, and we start making up and creating our own boundaries and putting our own reasoning and definitions in place. Once again, if you were going to offer, and this is your sacrifice, whether you were at the tent of meetings, you still had to give it. And if you did it outside, away from the tent of meetings, and you didn't do it right, you were going to pay the consequences of it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Once again, let's look at it again. He says, speak to them. This is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded them. What man soever there be of the house of Yasrael that killeth ox or lamb or goat in the camp, then shall wash his clothes and bathe his flesh. Wait a minute, hold on. I'm sorry, hold on, please. Sorry, y'all. Okay. I'm going in the wrong, I'm sorry, y'all. Whoops. We read right from left, and sometimes I have to remember that. I mean, yes, right to left. And so when you left, yeah, left to right, I'm sorry. Yeah, left to right. So you still, when you flipping pages, I'm sorry. Now, kill it without the cap, and have not brought it unto the door of the tent of meeting, to present it as an offering unto Yahuwah before the tabernacle of Yahuwah. Blood shall be imputed unto that man, for he hath shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. Once again, giving distinct instructions on how things are supposed to be handled. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Killing without the camp, and have not brought it unto the door of the tent of meeting, to present it as an offering unto Yahuwah before the tabernacle of Yahuwah. Blood shall be imputed unto that man. He hath shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. Verse 5, to the end that the children of Yasrael may bring their sacrifice, which they sacrifice in the open field, even that they may bring them unto Yahuwah unto the door of the tent of meeting. Once again, they couldn't just go and do it anywhere. You couldn't spill blood just anywhere.
That's right.
Now, someone may ask the question, why not? Once again, because they had a belief that many of them, and I believe it, were out there sacrificing to demons.
Right.
And that's why they would not bring it to the temple, because they were offering it to another deity. And that's why Yahuwah said, if you're going to sacrifice, now remember, this is about sacrificing. You had to do it in that place. You couldn't just do it anywhere. Are you following me?
Yes.
You couldn't do it anywhere. You had to do it right there where it was authorized and where it was commanded. Now, let's look at this once again. An ox, etc. The Torah speaks here of animals that have been dedicated as offerings. So you couldn't just go and kill whatever you wanted to kill and not bring the offering.
That's right.
Are you following me? Once again, we're looking at the setup and we're looking at instructions. Because you can imagine, now once again, just imagine with me, and this is just me. Are y'all following me? This is me, and this is at the what I see, and I'm saying it in this manner, so people won't be trying to say that I'm doctrinalizing my views. I believe the reason why it was important that if they offer up or sacrifice these animals to do it at the tent, is because it's a sacrifice that belongs to who? Yahuwah. So if you're doing it outside of that, the question would be, why and who are you dedicating it to?
Right.
Are you following me?
Yeah.
So in order to keep people from misusing that what was given to them to give back to Yahuwah, like they did the gold, there had to be instructions put in place. Are you following me?
Yes.
Instructions. These instructions were to help govern. So let's just use this as an example. Just say, brother or Abaya, use the name, Abaya, is sacrificing an ox in the field. And everybody is looking and they're saying, but why is he not at the temple, at the tent of meetings?
Right.
He takes the meat and he sacrifices, but he takes the meat and he puts it up. Now guess what happens? Well, if he's doing it, maybe I could do it too. Now it becomes an epidemic, and that what does not belong to them, they began to take and utilize it for other purposes instead of giving it unto Abba Yahuwah. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, a lot of times people don't like to hear this. That's just like the tithes. We're supposed to bring 10%. You're supposed to bring 10%. All you got to do is look at Malachi. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And I don't care how many times people try to change it up and try to say, well, we're not over there, so we don't have to tithe. If you take away from one part of it, then you dismantle the whole structure. Because we can't take pieces of it and then annul the other portions of it that we don't feel comfortable or like. Because when you start talking about money, that's when people start getting a little nervous. And that's when people start backing up. Why? Because people don't want to hear about nobody giving them money, because they felt like, well, when I was in Christianity, all we did was pay tithes, and that's all they did. Look it up. And they took from us, and they lived well, and we suffered. Well, of course, because you're giving to a system that does not walk in, that's not following the ordinances or the statutes that it's connected to.
That's right.
Are you following me? People asking you or commanding you to pay tithes, and they don't even keep the Sabbath, and they don't even keep the feast, and they don't even utilize it for what its purpose is for. Right. So you could not expect a yield, and you can't expect to get anything from when it's wrong.
That's right.
Are you following me? That's like putting quarters into a machine that has no merchandise, even though you see a green light. Just because you see a green light doesn't mean that it's working and that it's on.
That's right.
And so you're expecting something out of it, but there is nothing to get out of it. So once again, when we learn truth, then we're supposed to walk in truth.
That's right.
But they were not supposed to do that once again. And so you find this. And so he said, no, this was dedicated. And so this was the theory. Don't do it. If you're going to do it, this is what belongs to Yahuwah. Are you following me?
Yes.
And then they still got a part of it, depending on what kind of offering they were offering. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Now blood shall be imputed. It is as he hath slaughtered a fellow man. He hath shed blood. The apparently redundant words are added to teach that if sprinkling the blood outside the court, his punishment is excessive or excision by the hand of Yahuwah. Once again, he hath shed blood. Now, the important for us to understand this is not just that he has shed blood, but that blood had a purpose. Mm-hmm. This is where, once again, you have a lot of those that are vegan that say that when you kill an animal, you're shedding blood, and you're not supposed to shed blood. Well, the reason that blood was not supposed to be shed, because that blood had a purpose. Are you understanding?
Yes.
That animal and that animal's blood was purposed and set as what? An offering for you if you've messed up. It's almost like money in an account that's set up. That money's purpose is for something that was designated very important for emergency times, for what? Hard times, for emergency and hard times. Are you following me?
Yes.
Your other money is set in another account, so you use that money for whatever. But if this is set aside for that, then you don't use that. Now remember, this is during that time. That was the offering. So they were not supposed to use it. because it was set aside for that. So you have to understand, when you disrupt the order and the instructions, you cause problems. Because it's dedicated as an offering to give to Yahuwah. So why would you take that what is supposed to be dedicated to him and use it for something else? Once again, remember, where purpose is not known, abuse is what? Inevitable. It's not that they didn't know the purpose. They willfully did what they wanted to, and this is why correction had to come. You don't use the heel of a shoe, you use a hammer.
That's right.
Are you understanding me?
Yes.
And so when they shed that blood, not just the blood of what? An animal, but that blood specifically at that time, that's what they would get punished for. And this is why I believe that the vegans take that and they say, well, if we shed the blood, it's like shedding the blood of what? A person. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Why would it be as a person? Because you have to understand, this is your substitute. Why eat your substitute? Are you following me?
Yes.
Yes.
Just like we say in sowing, why eat your seed? We're gardeners. We get our first crop. You don't eat all the seeds. Eat all it up and then discard the seed. If you do that, you'll have what? No seed to plant. You have no seed to plant, you'll have what? No harvest. So once again, it's important for us to understand. Are y'all following? I hope I'm bringing this out as clear as I know how.
Yes.
Once again, why would you eat your substitute? Why would you put that what pays the ransom or satisfies? I won't pay, but satisfies the ransom over your life for something else. Are you following me?
Yes.
I'm putting this matter. That's just like abusing a great relationship. Why abuse a great relationship? Because if you abuse and mess up a great relationship, it's hard to find another great relationship.
That's right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
If you abuse it, it's hard to find a better one. Because that's supposed to be great.
Mm-hmm.
It's important we understand, once again, let's not abuse what Yahuwah has given to us. And so this is why this was placed there. Now, once again, if you don't look at it in that manner, you will continue to look at animals as being your equal in the other respect. And that's why vegans don't eat them. They are not our equal.
That's right.
But at that time, they were substitutes. And if you ate your substitute, what were you going to use? You had nothing, right? Once again, safety measures in place for us as his people.
Yes.
So we didn't eat. We didn't eat. All right, y'all hear me?
Yes.
Which they sacrifice in the open field. The error is sacrificing the animals to demons and not to Yahuwah. Once again, that's what they were out there doing. You know what else? That is a reference to giving yourself over to another deity. Remember we read in Weikra chapter 17 and 18 about relationships, and even Gehinnom, the place of Sheol, the place of hell, that place where the children of Yisrael had got to a point where they were offering up their children to Baal, Molech, and they were burning them. Why? Because they had basically changed their alliance and their commitment from serving Yahuwah to serving an idol deity. When that was done, and when it is done, you basically walk away from Yahuwah, because what you're telling him when you walk away is that you are not qualified anymore to give to me and to bring to me what I need. And I found a better way. And this better way is contrary to what you've given me. Are y'all following me? In other words, I believe I can get better coverage with this deity than I have with you, which is a blatant lie.
Right.
The only 100% full coverage we can ever get, and that's only through Yahuwah and through his son, Yahushua al-Mashiach.
That's right.
Even insurance companies, which is a ripoff and which is a joke, and it's just so much. But once again, they're always tug of war, and they're always fighting because they're always trying to get us to make a switch. I can offer you better. You can only offer me what is allowed for you to offer me. It's a mind game, because no matter what, you go to this one, it's the same thing. They may offer you in that first cycle, maybe a little less, but in that next cycle, you're gonna pay the same amount you was paying with the other insurance. Because it's just a game. They'll get you in based on that lower installment and that lower payments, but the next cycle, oh, you're gonna pay more, pay about the same amount or more. Once again, they can do no more than what legally is given them when it comes to this business. But when it comes down to our way of life in Yahuwah, can't nobody outdo him.
That's right.
There is no power in the earth, around the earth, and above the earth that can ever match or equal his authority and power.
That's right.
So why would we switch? And when I say Yahuwah, you have to understand Yahusha is included. Because he's a part of him. And the Ruach HaKodesh, because she's a part of it. Once again, it's important. There is no system out there that's greater than this. So when you trade off, you're trading down and not up. Because there's no other way up but through him. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. Trying to drive this home so that we can understand there's no other way. And we have to follow his instructions each and every day. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. Now, I want to read this, and it says, oh, we read to verse 5, right?
Yes.
All right, okay, I don't want to go past that. All right, let's read. It's really only 20-something verses here. We're almost finished with this. 16 verses, I'm sorry. 16 verses.
Verse 6. And the Kohen shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar of Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and burn the fat for a sweet savor unto Yahuwah. And they shall no more offer the sacrifices unto goat demons, after whom they have gone forward.
Mm-hmm.
This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. And you shall say unto them, whatever man there be of the Bays, of Yasarel, or of the strangers which sojourn among you, that offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and brings it not unto the door of the tabernacle of congregation, to offer it unto Yahuwah, even that man shall be cut off from among his people. And whatever man there be of the Bays of Yasarel, or of the foreigners that sojourn among you, that eats any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that man that eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, they were out there sacrificing to demons. And that is why they had to change it, because they were sacrificing to demons. Now, once again, and they said, and I want to read this because it gives a description, and they were called satries, serim. They are demons who are so called because they have hairy appearance. They appear to deluded persons in the form of ghosts. So they weren't ghosts, they were like hairy, nasty, almost like a troll. Yeah, like a pan or like a troll. But to throw people off, they would appear to them like a goat. So you got to understand, man, there was some stuff going on. Trust me. And these people, and even you start thinking, still, why would you want to offer that up to a goat instead of Yahuwah, the one you've seen that brought you through, that kept you, preserved you in spite of your error, and now you want to trade down? That's getting out of the trading system. That ain't even a trade.
Right.
That's like going outside and saying somebody telling you got a Hummer outside. All you gotta do is get it. It's yours free of charge. You go out there and it's a child's Hummer. What you gonna do with that? That ain't no real Hummer. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And one a child, you gonna sit in there, your knees all the way up to your jaws, not to your chest, to your jaws, and you trying to drive it. It's not even in the category of real car.
Right.
Y'all follow me? Once again, this is how far-fetched that sounds. That's how far-fetched it is and was, because why would our people do that? Once again, luring when you are deceived and when the enemy has basically got your attention. And when he gets your attention, that's one thing about it. He does everything to maintain it. And when he gets it, he knows just what keeps our attention. And that's why he does what he does. And this is why you ought to never, ever give him your attention, and never, ever, ever give him the time of day. Because when you do, his whole goal is to constantly pick, constantly try to find what gets you and what maintains and holds your attention. And he's going to keep on doing it. This is why we have to always make sure he never gets our attention. Are you following?
Yes.
Very important. And it is so.
Yes.
A statute, however, not to sacrifice to demons, even though they are not regarded as powers, but the aim is only to seek their help. Once again, because remember, he said, don't worship, don't serve them, and then don't worship them. And I was looking at that today, that kind of stood out to me. Don't serve them and don't worship them. See, because they served them, but they didn't worship them. Then they worshiped them, but then they didn't serve them. But you can't do one without the other, because eventually one is going to provoke you into the other. You're going to smash one way or the other into it. So they felt like, well, if I just provoke his help, because I don't believe Yahuwah is moving fast enough. Y'all follow me? Y'all know how people do. Well, I can't get none. I got to go to church. Because if I go to church, at least the pastor or somebody in there may feel something or hear something. Who they hearing it from? Not Yahuwah. Are y'all following me? And I don't want to hear that. Well, maybe it's a possibility. If that's the case, then why do you think he brought us out of truth? Why not leave us where we were if he could randomly pop up every now and then and show us the right way? That means he wouldn't have had to bring us out of that, but he brought us out of that because, number one, there was no door for truth to come to you through that access. People don't like it, but it's the truth. It is the truth. Once again, and then people get to a point where they start feeling like, well, I ain't heard no prophetic word. Just because you don't hear one saying, thus says Yahuwah, doesn't mean Yahuwah ain't speaking. Are y'all following? Just because you don't hear tongues behind it or in front of it, understand something. We've got to unlearn the things that we thought were the way that Yahuwah did things or does things. Now understand, don't get me wrong, I do believe there's a spiritual language, but not that we called on the day of Acts. Are you following me?
Yes.
That was their language. But it took the Ruach Kodesh to loosen their tongue for them to speak that language. That was an earthly language that could be interpreted by those that understood it because it was their language. So once again, it's important that we understand. I believe there is a heavenly language, but that wasn't it. So you can't use Acts. Are you following me? But once again, we've got to follow in truth. But we go and we find ourselves vacillating because we are truly not confident in that what Yahuwah has given us or who he has given us. So we go to church and we sit up in that thinking that we're going to hear something that's going to help us. I've learned this. I've always was taught and having children, don't confuse a baby. Either you're going to nurse or you're going to give them a bottle. But you can't do both. You can't do both. Either you're going to nurse them, which is the healthy way and the way that Yahuwah gave to us as a people or as women, or you're going to give them a bottle. You give them a bottle and you give them that synthetic milk. That's what they're going to take. And if they reject you, you have to understand why. Because you set their system up to drink synthetic milk. And if they reject the synthetic milk, it is because they don't want that nasty stuff. They want that what is they are supposed to have. It agrees with them. They know it's theirs. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because it's natural. It connects with the body. Because it's for them. Not something that is made up. And then, y'all, just word of caution and just to encourage you. Most of the time when they get these formulas, you have to be careful because sometimes those things be laced with bugs, and they have other stuff in it. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm warning you. It's the truth. That stuff you have to understand. You just didn't find a bug in it. There are bugs already in it. They just are dormant, and then the right condition and weather causes them to start manifesting and coming to the surface. We need to do classes and talk to some of these young ladies about nursing. You know, people think being breastfeeding is nasty because of the way society has made it seem like it's something nasty or it's a sexual thing. You follow me? You say breast and everybody running, ducking and dodging and acting all crazy. But Yahuwah created us, and he created us to be able to nurture and feed our own babies and not buy a bottle. Plastic bottles are not, they're not, you can't really keep them clean because it's plastic. Glass bottles can be broken and you still have the hardest of time keeping them old dirty, nasty, stinky nipples clean. Are you understanding me?
Yes.
Really, once again, it's important that we understand. When you know better, you do better. But I made that analogy for this reason. If you start nursing from the breast of that what is outside and not what is right, that's what you're going to have a taste for. That's what you're going to have a desire for. But if you continue to pull from the Torah and want from the Torah, then that's what your palate will always want, and anything else, it will reject it. Because it won't be able to digest it. You'll vomit it up. You will regurgitate it up. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's important to understand that. So once again, don't go to something else because you don't want to confuse your palate. You're following me?
Yes.
Because it will. Because one or the other, one is going to break down the other. And if you break it down, then once again, whatever you break it down to is what you're going to want and what you're going to desire. And that's why you can't confuse babies. And this, once again, is a statute forever. Don't do it. You shall be cut off. His offspring will die and his days be shortened. Now, once again, his offspring will die and his days will be shortened. You don't want to die and you don't want your offspring shortened. You don't want to die and you don't want your offspring's life shortened. Are you following me?
Yes.
No, his offspring will die. I'm sorry. His offspring will die and his days be shortened. His days will be shortened and his offspring will die because he will have nothing or no one to carry on his name. We're seeing that today. Don't want that. Don't want to walk in that. And it is so. All right. That eateth any manner of blood. Now, once again, you're not to eat blood. The Greeks drank it in order to have affinity with the demons and thus get to know what the future had in store for them. That's why when you start looking at, that's why he told us don't do it. When you look at certain movies, what was it we saw? Scorpion King. Anytime you see people that are operating in divination and so forth, that's what they would do. They would drink blood of an animal, and in other places because they're trying to see future. And the Greeks did it. And look what it did. It gave them affinity with the demons and thus get to know what the future had in store for them. Now, that meant they got into a relationship with this demonic spirit. Are you following me?
Yes.
In order to understand and be able to talk with. In other words, this would appease the demon and they became the host so the demon could basically be backwards and forth. Now, this may seem crazy, but I'm going to use it anyway. Anybody ever seen, what is that thing with the rabbits? What is that? No, you know what I'm talking about with the fish, Darwin.
Gumbo.
Gumballs. I could not think of gumballs. Now, y'all have to understand, there was a segment on gumballs. And this is why if you allow your children to watch cartoons, you have to really modify and watch the cartoons they watch. On one of the episodes of Gumball, you know, we don't watch it like we used to, there is a ghost, a demon. And in order for this ghost to experience what it felt like to be in flesh, Gumball, ain't that his name? Mm-hmm. Had to allow this female ghost to possess him. And this thing would eat and eat and eat and do all kind of crazy things, have Gumball acting like a fool because it's a demon. Now, you have to understand, at first, you know, you laugh because you see the stupid stuff they do, but then it stops being funny because that's when the Ruach kicks in. You start thinking, wait, this is not funny. Because they are showing this to children to open them up, to be receptive and be open to receive demons in them because it's fun and games. It is not fun and games. And this is what they did. And so when I saw that, I said immediately, and most of our young adult children know better. And even our young child knows better. But we still emphasize, y'all, this ain't right. And this is not funny because you have children that have imaginary friends.
Mm-hmm.
You have children that have friends that they say, yeah, well, you know, Tommy was with me today and Tommy told me to do this and Jody told me to do this or Karen told me to do this or Kim told me to do this. And you're wondering, oh, that's just their imaginary friend. Okay, imaginary friend, that's a demon that's setting you up and setting your child up. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And that's who I talk to because everybody else is mean. And while you're thinking there's nobody there, there is something there to see. And so once again, it's important that we understand you can't play these games. If you get in the arena with the enemy and Yahuwah hadn't told you to get there, you're going to get your behind toe up.
That's right.
Now, and then there's another rendering that says, the prohibition originated in the fact that those who eat the blood come with the same bestial passions which the animal possess. Now, once again, you have two, demon or they become beastie. I say both.
Mm-hmm.
Because anytime you drink blood, you act like a beast. Huh? Either or. Right. You can't. Because if you're drinking blood, you already have the nature of a beast. And you're already in consort with the demonic spirit. Are you following me?
Yes.
That's why even people, when they be talking about, oh, it's okay to have a little blood in your steak, that's a lie. Because still, it is putting you in the position to open yourself up for that. And remember, that's the life. So the reason they say that is because you still get a life, a bit of the animal. And most of the time, they leave it in what? Beef.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the beef. Because beef is strong. Ox are strong. Are you understanding me?
Yeah.
Cows are strong. That they are strong. Cattle, they're strong. And so most of the time, because they want you to get the strength and they want you to get all that stuff. Let me tell you, and if people ain't picked up that you ain't supposed to do that after the mad cow disease came out, something wrong with them. Once again, people eating this stuff and the cows going crazy. No. Are y'all following me? But once again, this is just one of the renderings. The Israelites accordingly must pour the blood on the altar as an atonement, as it is not right that one creature should devour the lifeblood of another creature. Once again, you're not supposed to take the blood. And that even lets you know even bats are an abomination. Because bats drink blood.
That's right.
They're an abomination. In other words, you had to cover it with the earth if you were somewhere. So if you were hunting, you had to cover it. You had to take it. In other words, nothing is supposed to have access to that blood. Nothing. If you ain't supposed to drink it, neither are any other animals. And that lets you know that bats are an abomination because bats drink blood. Along with, what's some other things leeches in the water, right? Ticks, fleas, mosquitoes. Those are all abominations and pestilence, and they suck the blood. And who? So it's important that we understand these things. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
These are abominations, and they take the blood. All right. I will set my face. Cities, the Midrashic explanation, which reads the word as Pnei, leisure, and makes Yahuwah say, I will turn away from all my affairs and concern myself only with him. The penalty of